might want to keep in mind with this, I don't think I mentioned it here, but what is Chaitanya Mahāprabhu first, almost in the beginning of his arrival in Vrindavan, what does he discover? Radha. Yeah. So this is something that saints do, is they discover lost places of pilgrimage. Okay, here now, here is talking first about another text called the Jayadev Charitra, and this is about Jayadev Goswami. It's a hagiography. Jayadev Goswami is a little mysterious. He seems to have lived in 13th century, I believe. And of course, he composed the Gita Govinda, which became hugely popular in India. And continues to be popular and is sung to the deities, Lord Jagannath, in Jagannath Puri, and is also sung in Jaipur, Govinda Dev Temple, in the greeting when they have the morning darshan. You'll hear suddenly everyone will sing in a cappella. They will sing verses, yes, with such hearty. They're singing some verses from the Gita Govinda. So this is from Jayadev. Yes.
It's also sung in a lot of temples in Karnataka.
Oh, is it?
Guruvayur, for example.
Oh.
And Trivandrum.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, they sing the full, it's like families that come and sing the Gita Govinda for the deities.
Yeah.
And years ago, we were there with Atmatapa and another teacher, and recording. They recorded the head chanter, and he said, "Come to our house, and you can record there. It'll be less commotion around."
Right.
I was with them, but I don't remember seeing this. But I remember going with them. I remember recording. But they tell the story that he had an altar, and they saw a picture on the altar of Lord Chaitanya. And they asked him, "Who's that?" And he said, "This is the best of the sannyasis. We learned the Gita Govinda from him."
Oh. Wow. That's good.
So
and you have that recording?
So in the Gurukul, we would sing the Gita Govinda in the evenings.
Yeah.
It's part of the tradition there in the school. And so we have like those Carnatic melodies were simplified. And yeah, it's sung there in the school.
I've heard that in the school, but I'd be interested in the original recording.
Yeah. Even today, you can go to Guruvayur, and maybe even today it's online.
So you don't have that?
No.
Okay, so the main theme, says Smith, of the Jayadev Charitra is Jayadev's discovery of the Radha Krishna image in the Ajay River at Kadamba Kandi Ghat, and the establishment of a tirtha there. Krishna appeared to him in a dream and told him that this had once been a major pilgrimage site, but knowledge of it had become obliterated in the course of time. Jayadev was instructed to go to the Ajay River, where the water was only knee-deep, and he could easily find the twin image, Yuga Murti, of Radha and Krishna, by feeling around for it with his hands. The next morning, Jayadev went to the river in the company of some Brahmins, whom he had told about the dream. When they arrived at the river, they saw the image shining, shobhe, in the shallow water. As the villagers who had gathered there in the hundreds played musical instruments and sang kirtans, Jayadev lifted up the double image, placed it on a platform, a pidi, and dressed the two figures. The Brahmins then recited mantras from the Vedas to consecrate it and offered it worship. A temple was built to house the image, and the king of Urdhvan himself came to receive darshan. Later, Radharaman Rajavasi commanded by a dream, came to Kenduli with a shalagram named Rajeshwari and established an ashram there. The sadhus who lived there claimed to be descendants of Jayadeva. One thing this reminds me of is, well, it's a bit tangential, but the story of the appearance of Radharaman in Vrindavan. I've written about this in this book, Attending Krishna's Image, because it's interesting from many perspectives. You probably know the story. Gopal Bhatta is lamenting the night before. It's Nrsimha Chaturdasi, and he's lamenting. And why is he lamenting? He's lamenting that Prahlad Maharaj is such an advanced, such a glorious devotee that the Lord, and because he's so qualified, the Lord appears to him as Nrsimha. But Gopal feels, who am I? I am such a lowly devotee. The Lord, when will he ever appear to me? In that mood, so we are told in the accounts, in that mood he fell asleep. Next morning, after his bathing, he goes to worship his Shalagram Shilas, and he notices that the basket, which is hanging in a tree, the cover of the basket is a little off. And he thinks, oh, I better be careful. There might be a snake. So he looks carefully, and why is it like this? Well, because now there's Radharaman in the basket. And the rest is history.
What's the name of this temple? It's still there, right?
I suppose so, but I don't know anything more than what he's describing here. Yeah. So then he goes on, again, because he's kind of juxtaposing these stories, and he's putting them together in terms of these common patterns. So he says, an interesting variant of the above motif can be found in the life of the Sikh guru Arjan. Sikhs, of course, do not worship images, but the location of a sacred site can be marked in other ways. The gurus Amar Das and Ram Das have begun the evacuations, I think that should be excavations, of tanks at Amritsar and Santokshar, and the work was continued under Guru Arjan. Evacuations. While the excavations went on, I'm just noticing this the first time. It was Arjun's habit to sit in the shade of the same shisham tree that had sheltered his predecessor Ramdas while he supervised the work. When the tank at Santokshar was nearly completed, the diggers unearthed a hut in which they found a naked yogi sitting in meditation. Arjan ordered that the yogi be dressed and his body rubbed until he returned to consciousness. When the yogi opened his eyes, he looked at Arjan and asked him which king was now reigning. He told Arjan that his guru had granted him the privilege of remaining in deep meditation beneath the ground until Arjan would become guru of the Sikhs, and that Arjan would awaken him and grant him salvation. Arjan then recited some verses to him. The yogi's doubts were cast aside, and he left his body like a serpent sloughs off its skin, having gained salvation by the grace of the Guru. that. There's so many stories of so many yogis, gurus, disciples, and so on. Another story? Why not? It's a little off topic in a sense, but again, it's about these patterns. So this is a subheading, still within Digvijaya, innovations. The practice of going on pilgrimage has often been called into question. The tirthas, some said, are within ourselves, and to visit sacred sites without cleansing one's own heart was pointless, since it is not mechanically performed rituals, but what is in one's heart that matters. As the Hindi proverb has it, the cat ate 900 mice and then went on a pilgrimage. The same Kabir, whom Mahipati describes as an enthusiastic pilgrim, writes, 3 men went on a pilgrimage, jumpy minds and thieving hearts. Not one sin was taken away. They piled up 9 tons more. Madhavadev writes, and Madhavadev, I believe, refers to one Vaiṣṇava saint in Sikkim. What is it? There's Sikkim, what's the other one? Assam. Writes that there is no need to visit tirthas. It is enough to utter the name of Govinda. The Sikh poet Guru Bhai brings up an ancient criticism of places of pilgrimage when he says, if bathing at tirthas procures liberation, frogs for sure must be saved. Raidas announces that he is not interested in asceticism or pilgrimage. His refuge is Ram alone. And Guru Nanak says, even if one bathes at 100 tirthas, the filth of egoism is not washed away. And he goes on with more reference to the Janam Sakhi. These are texts glorifying Guru Nanak and his life. So like this, there are so many stories. Yes.
But aren't the frogs actually saved if they're bathing in a holy place?
I knew someone was going to ask. I knew someone was going to ask. You'll have to ask the frogs. Now, I wanted to also call attention to this aspect of Digvijaya, debate, because we have some discussions in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, famous discussions, and we'll come to that also. Saints were a peripatetic breed, and their travels were not limited to visits to the tirthas. Many biographies describe their subjects as being in perpetual motion. The Bhakti Ratnakar, for example, which is, of course, describing the followers of Caitanya Mahāprabhu in the next generation after the Panchatattva, the Goswamis, and so on. The Bhakti Ratnakar, for example, is largely a chronicle of the constant movement of Srinivas, Narottam, and other Gaudiya Vaishnava saints. Their journeys, Gamana or Yatra, the preparations for them, Gamana Udyoga, arrivals, Agamana, stays, Pavatana, meetings, Sakshat, leave-takings, Vidaya Grahana, and returns, Pratyavartana. Naturally, everyone the saints came into contact with during their wanderings did not share their beliefs. And in this way, places of pilgrimage and other meeting places could be transformed into arenas for debates and journeys into Digvijayas, campaigns of spiritual conquest in which the saints met and vanquished ideological rivals and doubters. Since such victories often resulted in the conversion of the latter, they can also be seen as missionary journeys. And there was an example here I wanted to share that I liked. Yes, okay. So this is referring not to Shankaracharya, I believe, but Shankaradeva. Yes, Shankaradeva, who was he is, in Assam, Shankaradeva is the big acharya of the Vaiṣṇavas, the Assamese Vaiṣṇavas. And I think he was somewhat contemporary to Lord Chaitanya, I'm not sure. In his more orthodox debates, Shankara often made his points with appropriate quotes from the Upanishads, which were the ultimate scriptural authorities, pramana. With the rise of Bhakti, its most important text, the Bhagavata Purana, began to play the same role. This can be seen in one of the most important debates in the history of Assamese Vaishnavism, that between Shankaradeva and Madhavadeva. Madhavadeva, a learned Kayasta and a Shakta, once asked a friend, one Ramdas, to go to a nearby village to buy a goat which would be sacrificed at the Durga Puja festival. Ramdas went from door to door in the village, inquiring whether anyone had a goat for sale. During the course of his inquiries, he met Shankaradeva, who convinced him that sacrificing animals was a terrible sin, and those who did so would suffer dire consequences in hell. Madhava decided that he would seek out Shankaradeva on the following day and discuss the matter with him. Daityari describes the long debate, the samvada, as follows. Then the two began to speak and discussed in raised voices. Both of them cited the Shastras and refuted them. Both spoke and did not convince each other. Madhava referred to the scriptures, making a point refuting him. Shankara shattered his argument. It went on from dawn to the third watch of the day. Nevertheless, the two of them did not cease talking. Neither could smash the arguments of the other. The impasse was finally broken when Shankaradeva cited a verse from the Bhagavata Purana. Watering the root of a tree gives nourishment to its trunk, branches, twigs, and all else. Sound familiar? By nourishing the vital winds, the senses are nourished. In the same way, all the gods are worshipped by the worship of Vishnu. Yata taror mula nishekchanita tripyanti tatskanda vichokshanta prano aharacha yatendriyanam tataiva sarvarpanam achyuteja. Shankara then went on to explain that giving worship to other deities was like watering the leaves and branches of a tree, while worshipping Krishna was like watering the trunk, which nourished all else. One can keep in mind here that according to the biographers of the Bhagavata Purana, the Bhagavata Purana was not known in Assam before Shankaradeva's day. This citation convinced Madhava, and he fell at Shankara's feet and accepted him as his guru. So like this. Now, as I was reading, it reminded me of something which now I'm not remembering. Okay. Debates. In any case, we have not exactly debates, but we have something that could be regarded like that in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And I find it interesting that Kṛṣṇadāsa Kaviraj gives us 2 times the same encounter with Prakashananda Saraswati. First in chapter 7 of Adi Lila, and then again in chapter 25 of Madhya Lila. It seems he really wants to make a point. And what is the point? The point is that Chaitanya Mahāprabhu, Chaitanya Mahāprabhu knows what he's talking about. That's one point he wants to make. He wants to make the point he knows what he's talking about when he says that the Shankarats, the followers of Shankara, don't know what they're talking about. And he wants to emphasize this, but who is he speaking to? Who is he writing for? He's writing for the Bengal Vaiṣṇavas. So it could be the case that he's emphasizing this because there were people in Bengal who were perhaps some kind of mixture of Vaishnava and Advaitavadins. And so he wants to say, let's make a clear distinction here, because this is what the Goswamis of Vrindavan are telling us we need to do, is to make a clear distinction between what they call Mayavada and Vaishnava Siddhanta. And maybe now it's good to jump to another item in your handout, and that is the multicolored chart. And yes, very nice that you could print in color. This is a very, very crude diagram with, as an attempt to map what we might say is this Digvijaya aspect. Well, to a large extent, the Digvijaya aspect of Mahaprabhu's activities as described in Chaitanya Charitamrita. I think it's kind of self-explanatory. It's a progression again of concentric circles, the fact that they're not symmetrically arranged with each other has no particular meaning, except that I couldn't somehow manage with the software that I was using, which was Microsoft Word. That's about the best I could do. So we have a center circle, which is indicating or symbolizing Chaitanya Mahāprabhu and his associates, his direct associates. Without any further specification of that circle, we could, if we wanted, I suppose, we could zero in on that, and we might find ways of mapping out that central circle, how the different associates are related. But we might decide, well, there's no real need to do that. Why? Because Kṛṣṇadāsa Kaviraj does it for us in the form of a tree. The Chaitanya tree of Krishna Prema, the Chaitanya tree of love of Godhead, which is described in, I think he starts in chapter 9 of Adi Lila, in any case, chapters 10, 11, and 12. He gives us an itemized description, listing of trunk. Well, first there's seed, then there's roots, then there's trunk, then there are branches, two main branches, and then there are sub-branches, and then there are sub-sub-branches. And what does that remind you of in ordinary life? This idea of branching and persons relating to the branches.
Genealogy?
Yes, a genealogical chart, yes, of, for example, a dynasty of kings or anyone. We have genealogical charts, which would normally be, if they're put into graphic form, you have the great-grandfather on the top of the chart, and then it works down to the present generations. And it's always branching out, branching out, branching out, because a lot of people have more than one child. And guess what? Gurus also often have more than one disciple. But it's more complicated than that, because in several cases, in the tree of this spiritual family tree, it's a kind of mixture of biological and spiritual families, because you have cases where brothers, there's almost no mention of women in that description. That's another topic. Women in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And indeed, it's a point of possible discussion. How would we chart, in this chart, how women are, how would they be oriented? But let's put that aside for now. The next, the pink circle, which is labeled number 2, I call other Vaishnava groups. So what can you think of would be other Vaishnava groups that are referred to in Chaitanya Charitamrita?
Tattvavadis.
The Tattvavadis, who we also know as what?
Madhavas.
The Madhavas. Yes, the followers of. There's Madhva and there's the Madhvas.
Yeah.
Yes. Who else?
Shri Vaishnava.
The Sri Vaishnavas, yes. Who else?
But it's more than the 4 sampradayas, right? Or it is, within the 4 sampradayas, there are different groups.
Represented in Chaitanya Charitamrita?
I'm just wondering.
Have to think about that. But I'm not so sure if we have different groups referred to.
You mentioned the Bhagavatas.
The Vaiṣṇavas Sampradaya. Yeah, Sri Prahlad was.
I was ready to go with that.
Yes.
Well, what about Raghupati Upadhyaya? Which sampradaya would he be connected with?
Oh, good question.
Lord Chaitanya really enjoys his association, it seems.
Yeah. Yes, good question. And it raises a more general point, and that is, how clearly delineated were these sampradayas? There's a sense, some historians have pointed out, even between the Vaiṣṇavas and the Gaudiyas, how strict of a delineation was there, especially at the time of Chaitanya Mahāprabhu. Later, yes, there seems to be more delineation, because there's perceived to be differences which somehow have to be acknowledged. But yes, and this reminds me also, I've read, again in a scholarly work, a book about Orient Vaishnavism. And I remember one point from that book that I always really appreciated, and that is that when Chaitanya Mahāprabhu was in the temple of Lord Jagannath, and he went every day to the temple, and would spend, a long time every day in the temple of Jagannath. What was he doing there? Of course, he was having darshan, but also he was having kirtan. And who was with him in those kirtans? Everybody and anybody. And this is in contrast to the kirtans in Srivas Thakur's house. And Madhavananda Prabhu makes the point that the Sankirtan movement began behind closed doors, and it ended behind closed doors. Chaitanya Mahāprabhu in the Gambhira. But in the middle, it was all open. There's Rath Yatra, and there's Mahaprabhu in the temple, and in the temple, all kinds of people were there in the temple, and they were joining in. Like the Krishna Balaram Mandir today, 24-hour kirtan, all kinds of people are coming with all kinds of philosophy or no philosophy, or who knows what they think or don't think. But they're all attracted to the kirtan. So this was Mahaprabhu's movement.
Didn't he also go to the Surya temple?
The
Lord Chaitanya will visit the Surya temple.
at Konark.
Yeah. So that's another, he's relating with other people, other groups.
Yes. So, this one, yes.
This reminds me, so my husband and I recently visited the Sri Vaiṣṇava Temple in Houston. And we met with the guru, who is one of the leading gurus in the Sri Charitamrita, Chinnajiva Swami. Wonderful Vaishnava. And so and we're friends with his personal assistant. And his personal assistant was telling us how his guru was glorifying Lord Chaitanya in his lectures with great appreciation. And we were just speaking with different devotees, they were very sweet. And they told us how they love kirtan, but they don't do kirtan in the temple the way we do. They just chant shlokas and sing. So the Sri Vaishnavas go to the ISKCON temple for kirtan.
You want kirtan? Go to the Kṛṣṇadāsa.
But it's something that it's so attractive still to even other followers of other sampradayas. That really struck me.
Yes. No, it's a special trademark, you could say, of
Yes.
Prabhupada's movement. Special. So here's what I wanted to say about other Vaishnava groups. Now, to think about how they are represented in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. First, we can, you mentioned Sri Vaishnava. So what is the mention of the Sri Vaishnavas in Chaitanya Charitamrita? Where do we encounter them? Venkatavata at Sri Rangam. And what goes on in that exchange they have? There's some joking. There's friendly joking. And maybe we should read some of that. Let's go to, I may need help to remember where this is. It's going to be chapter 8. No.
Yeah, that's good.
Chapter 9. Must be in chapter 9.
It is in chapter 9.
Yes, okay. Kṛṣṇadāsa says, because it is impossible for me to record all these places in chronological order, I will simply make a token gesture recording him. He's not going to worry too much about exactly where Lord Chaitanya went, when, and which came first, and which came. So there is some, geographically it's all a bit mixed up, but he's not worried about that. Let's see now. Hovelam. Anyone here has been to a Hovelam? No. If you were in a Hovelam, you would remember. It's a kind of wild place in the hills with rocks and mountains. I'm just now reminded that Lord Chaitanya is open. It's here somewhere.
X108.
108, thank you. That's a good number.
That's the start of those joking dialogues.
Okay, here we go. He matta bhatta grihe brahme gora sangha nirantara bhakta sangha Kṛṣṇadāsa. Sri Caitanya Mahāprabhu remained at the house of Venkata Bhatta and constantly talked with him about Lord Krishna. In this way he was very happy. There's a house at Srirangam which is said to be Venkata Bhatta's house.
The Bhattas live there.
The Bhattas.
Muridhara Bhatta and Narasimha Bhatta. Muridhara Bhatta is one of the head pujaris for the temple. Yeah.
And right across that street is a little Jagannath temple with very charming deities of Jagannath with very distinctive faces. And we are told, the tradition is that these murtis were personally carved by Chaitanya Mahāprabhu. He was there for 4 months during the rainy season. So it's quite possible that he actually did that because he had time.
The Bhattas look after that temple.
Uh-huh.
And Indradutta Maharaj had a disciple go down to help restore those
He's
deities.
restoring. Oh, restored the deity.
Yeah. And he stayed in the room that they said was Mahaprabhu's room. When
Wow. My ashram in Poland, we have deities which are replicas of those deities. Yeah. They're very nice. But maybe we could show a picture of that. Those
that'd be
deities.
nice. Please.
Yeah, we have to, shall we look for it?
Yes.
All right. Let's see now.
Not sure.
So, Jagannath in Srirangam. Jagannath Mat, Srirangam.
These are the ones.
Huh? Oh, yeah.
They're like babies.
Yeah.
Huh?
They're like babies.
Like, they're cute, aren't they? Yeah. Jai Jagannath.
Yeah, Jagannath.
Okay, so where were we? They were here somewhere. Okay. So he remained in the house of Venkata Bhatta, constantly talked with him about Lord Krishna. Being a Vaiṣṇava in the Ramanuja Sampradaya, and that's not, he's adding that. Venkata Bhatta worshipped the deities of Lakshmi and Narayana, seeing his pure devotion Sri Chaitanya Mahāprabhu was very satisfied. Tara Bhakti Deki, Prabhu Tushta Hoilaman. Was it Bhakti Siddhanta Thakur or Bhaktivinoda Thakur who said, in the future people will learn Bengali language just to read Chaitanya Charitamrita? Hasya parihase, dunhe shakir shodha. Constantly associating with each other, Sri Chaitanya Mahāprabhu and Venkata gradually developed a friendly relationship. Indeed, sometimes they laughed and joked together. And then he'll explain what they're saying. So before we were just talking about debates, now we get a friendly debate. Prabhu Kohe, but Tomar Lakshmi Thakurani Kanta Bhakta Potibrata Shiromani. Sri Chaitanya Mahāprabhu told the Bhattacharya, your worshipable goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, always remains on the chest of Narayana, and she is certainly the most chaste woman in the creation. Amar Thakur Krishna Gopa Gocharata Shadri Hanya Kene Chahe Tahara Shangamo. However, my Lord is Lord Sri Krishna, a cowherd boy who is engaged in tending cows. Why is it that Lakshmi, being such a chaste wife, wants to associate with my Lord? Huh? Elagi Shukavoga Chari Chiraka Vrataniyam Kari Tapakorina Bhopar. Just to associate with Krishna, Lakshmi abandoned all transcendental happiness in Vaikuntha, and for a long time accepted vows and regular principles and performed unlimited austerity. So like this, he's poking Venkata. He can do this because now they have a friendly, joking relationship. I've read that years ago in something anthropological about some society somewhere, I can't remember, was it Eskimos maybe, or what are they, not called Eskimos, they're called
Inuit?
Inuit, yeah. That relationships are very much defined in terms of joking. Who can joke with whom? Yeah, who can joke with whom? This is how you know what's your position. Abhiram Prabhu, my godbrother, he wrote about, or he spoke about this, and it was recorded. He actually had a joking relationship with Prabhupada. He would joke with him. They enjoyed it. So it goes on like this, and it's kind of like a friendly debate.
There's a praman.
Here comes the praman, yes. This is quoting from the Bhagavatam. O Lord, we do not know how the serpent Kaliya attained such an opportunity to be touched by the dust of your lotus feet. Even the goddess of fortune, for this end, performed austerities for centuries, giving up all other desires and observing austere vows. Indeed, we do not know how the serpent Kaliya got such an opportunity. Now, one way I like to suggest thinking about the Chaitanya Charitamrita as a whole is it is giving us the story of an ideal reader of the Srimad Bhagavatam. There's in literary studies, there's literary theory, and within literary theory, there is what's called reader response theory, where the focus is on how people read and how they respond to what they read, how they interpret. There's a cartoon, it shows three people on the subway. A lady is in the middle and she's reading a book, and there's a man right next to her on either side, and they're also reading the book, and they're also holding on to it. And one of them is laughing, and the other is crying, and they're all reading the same book. I don't know if this is related. It has been said that, let's see if I get this right. For one who thinks life is a comedy, for one who feels life is a tragedy. Anyway, Hare Krishna. So, thinking of Lord Chaitanya as an ideal, and this is a concept in literary jargon, an ideal reader. So when an author writes, there's this idea that the author is thinking of who will be the ideal reader of what he or she writes. And so we might want to think of Chaitanya Mahāprabhu as an ideal reader of Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's not just when he sits down and reads, of course. And even when he does sit down and read, what is he doing? He's reading together with others. There's a painting of Mahaprabhu and several of his associates, a famous painting. And I believe it's Gadadhar Pandit who's doing the actual reading, and everyone else is listening. And it's kind of a humorous painting in one aspect, and that is that on the side is standing Haridas Thakur in his kopans. And it's like he's just gotten out of the Sarovara and he's, I don't know, drying off his gamcha or something. So you imagine it's a real scene, you know. And in the front, offering Dandavat Pranam is King Prataparudra. And what I've heard is that this painting was commissioned by him because he wanted to, show himself surrendering to Lord Chaitanya. Yeah. So Lord Chaitanya as reader and listener to auditor of Srimad Bhagavatam, as the ideal reader. And as the ideal reader, he sometimes remembers also verses. And here he is having a friendly debate with a charya of another sampradaya. And he's having some fun with him. But while he's doing that, he's supporting his point with Shastra. And what is the Shastra? It's Bhagavatam. And what is the particular context of the verse that he's quoting? It's Krishna dancing on Kaliya, and the wives of Kaliya are going, "Oh my God." Let's see. "Oh Lord, we do not know how the serpent Kaliya attained such an opportunity to be touched by the dust of lotus. Even the goddess of fortune," so this is the connection, of course. "Even the goddess of fortune for this man performed austerity." So he's giving a proof text, as it would be called, that the goddess of fortune performs austerities for centuries, it says here. Does it say that word for word? For a long time, Suchiram, anyway. Gives up other desires and observes austerities. So there are so many references, as I mentioned before, the Bhagavatam is quoted so many times, hundreds of times in Chaitanya Charitamrita. And why is that? Of course, it's understood Chaitanya Mahāprabhu himself. He's experiencing what he's experiencing and being prompted by the Srimad Bhagavatam. And of course, his main prompters, like you have prompters in a drama, for those who don't remember their lines, standing in the wings. So kind of standing in the wings were two devotees in particular. Who were these? Shukralada.
Swarup Damodar and Ramanandarai.
Yeah, Swarup Damodar and Ramanandarai. They were always at hand, ready to prompt. They could sense where Mahaprabhu was going in his mood, and they would know the right verse to support that. And Mahaprabhu would hear the verse, go more into ecstasy or sometimes faint. And then he would wake up. That's all in the Antya Lila. He would wake up and he would say, what happened? I hope I didn't do something foolish. He was, worried, embarrassed. Okay, so we have the Sri Vaiṣṇavas.
Sometimes their verses also prompt them to sing a song.
Yes.
Just like 8 verses explaining the verse,
Yeah.
like going so deep.
Yes.
And I was also thinking, as you were speaking about Prabhupada's introduction to his Bhagavatam, he gives his introduction and then the last significant portion of it, he explains the life of Lord Chaitanya, the ideal preacher,
Right.
or the preacher of Srimad Bhagavatam,
Yes.
and it's Lord Chaitanya's life and then his teachings as well.
Yeah, because he's hearing Bhagavatam for his internal purpose, but also his external purpose, because he has two purposes, which is explained by Kṛṣṇadāsa in the very beginning, chapter 2, I think, on Lila. 2, 3, 4. So, okay, that's Sri Vaishnavism is mentioned. Then we have moving to earlier time, not mentioning the Nimbarka Sampradaya. In fact, here it doesn't mention Sri Vaishnava. Prabhupada inserted that. I don't think anywhere it mentions explicitly Sri Vaishnava. Similarly, not mentioned is the Nimbarka Sampradaya, but there is one person who can be understood to be represented in the Nimbarkas, and that's Keshava Kashmiri, who is a major figure in the Nimbarka Sampradaya. He's also apparently the composer of a work, Hayashirsha Pancharatra. I don't know if he composed. Anyway, there's some connections there, which is quoted in Hari Bhakti Vilasa. In any case, yes, we know that story, and that, of course, is an interesting kind of debate situation. It starts out as a debate, in a sense, where Chaitanya, who is known at that time as Nimai Pandit, he's a Pandit, invites this Pandit, this visiting Pandit, to glorify the Ganga, which he promptly does in non-stop recitation of verses composed on the spot, 100 verses. Glorifying, perfect Sanskrit, glorifying. We had one Sri Vaishnava, I keep making, what's the word, divergences, but for some time we had one wonderful Sri Vaishnava devotee scholar spending time in our center in Oxford, he was a real pundit. He was the real deal. And very humble at the same time, and a Vaishnava. And one time we took him to Bhaktivedanta Manor for the occasion of Srila Prabhupada's Tirobhava Tithi. And he was in the temple room, and we were there, and we were different devotees speaking about Srila Prabhupada. And he was listening, and then he went out of the room for some time, maybe 20 minutes, and then he came back in, and he said, if you don't mind, I would like to recite some verses which I have just composed. And he had, I forget, 6 or 8 verses in Trishtup. You know, Anushtup, okay, maybe it's possible to do rather quickly, shorter verses like Bhagavad Gita. Trishtup is a bit longer. He had composed verses glorifying Srila Prabhupada. And I don't know if it was before or after this, but he composed also 100 verses glorifying Prabhupada. And there's an article in Back to Godhead with some of those verses quoted. Radhika Mahāprabhu wrote this article. Anyway, so what happens? You know the story. Lord Chaitanya listens and he says, very nice, but can we just look at verse number 5? And then he finds, I think, was it 3 or 5 faults? According to Sanskrit prosody, you know, there are rules for good poetry, and one should, if it's going to be good poetry, one should not. And so he identifies these faults. And of course, the Pandit is embarrassed, he is shamed, and he prays to Saraswati, and Saraswati informs him who it is that he has been encountering. This is none other than the Lord himself. And therefore this happens, and therefore you should not lament. And so everything is clarified, cleared. So that's one encounter. And then with Vallabha, and we have this description in, I think it's Antya-lila chapter 7. And this is an example of, we had appreciation and correction for these 13 chapters of Antya-lila. So this is a case of a combination of both. There's appreciation and there's correction. First, there's appreciation by Vallabha of Chaitanya Mahāprabhu. But there's also appreciation of Chaitanya Mahāprabhu or Vallabha, who is also referred to by his followers as Mahaprabhu. But there's a problem, and the problem is that Vallabha wants to share his commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam, and he's not going to pay attention to the commentary of Sridhar Swami. And this is a big problem for Chaitanya Mahāprabhu and his followers. And Chaitanya Mahāprabhu says something quite strong to make his point. But just how he said it, I think, is unfortunately lost by the fact that all we have is the written word. Plato worried about this. The Greek philosopher wrote about the problem of writing. He said, writing is a problem. Why is it a problem? Because you read what someone else has written, and something about it may be unclear, and you're not sure what it is, and you want to question what has been written. But all you have is the written word to reply to you. So there's a silence there. And this is, it cannot give you any expression of how it's spoken. It cannot, there's no adjustment, it's just, there it is, it's text. And Plato wrote that. So did Plato really mean what he said? In any case, Vallabha was corrected by Chaitanya Mahāprabhu, but it's mentioned, he said it with a smile. What did he say?
He who rejects the Swami is a prostitute.
Yeah.
One who rejects the Swami is a prostitute.
One who rejects the Swami is a prostitute. It's a pretty heavy statement, but he did say it with a smile. And so we don't actually know what the mood was in that communication.
There are other indications, because Vallabha went and forced Gadadhar to hear after Srutanga wouldn't let him read to Chaitanya.
Yeah.
He went and imposed himself on Gadadhar.
Yes.
And then Gadadhar, he said, like he's very gentle and
Yes.
he tolerated it. He said, look, I'm not so worried about what Lord Chaitanya is going to say, but I do fear the followers of Lord Chaitanya.
Yes.
They can be unforgiving.
Yes, yes, exactly. They can be unforgiving. Yeah. That says a lot about our culture, doesn't it? Something to think about. Okay, so that's the exchange with Vallabha, or one exchange. And then the Tattvavadis. Now, what do all four of these have in common? What might we want to say that they have in common? They're all exchanges with Lord Chaitanya. Anything else?
Mahaprabhu is pushing people out of their comfort zone to experience something higher.
Ah, okay, that's there.
Could also be said, they were defeated.
Say again?
They were defeated.
They're defeated. What I like to say is there's a certain one-upmanship going on here. Yes, your sampradaya is very nice. Nice. Yeah, but there's something more. Because with the Tattvavadis, I don't know, we can say that he's pushing them. He seems to be pretty much just, he hears a bit what they say and then he kind of dismisses them. At least according to what Kṛṣṇadāsa says.
Isn't that for the purpose of getting them to see their fallacy and like go beyond their dry interpretation?
Of course, we can understand that way. And we can say with Vallabha in particular, he does seem to have some kind of change of heart to some extent. But that's more complex, I think, and part of that lesson that Mahaprabhu gives to Vallabha, according to Kṛṣṇadāsa, is Mahaprabhu says, how have I become, if I've become qualified, how have I become qualified? It's because of Advaita Acharya, it's because of Haridas Thakur, it's because, and he lists several devotees as being his teachers, and he specifies how they have taught him. So many ways. He says, I'm just learning. Ramananda Roy, of course, he gives all credit to. Swarp Damodar he mentions as well. Yeah, so it's a little complicated. This reminds me, I'm kind of just going in an open-ended way here, following my own thoughts. One of the categories of the patterns toward the end, you may have wondered, is from William Smith, is hard bhakti. And here I've mentioned the story of Chota Haridas and that of Bora Haridas. But specifically Chota Haridas, I think, is a nice example of hard bhakti. Hard in the sense that there's some kind of violence, physical violence involved, which is, however, one way or another, demonstrating bhakti, demonstrating devotion to the Lord. So many stories are there. And from the Ram Leela tradition, it's not in the Valmiki Ramayana, but we all know the story that Hanuman was very disturbed that he couldn't find Rama until he was told. Who told him? That Rama and Sita are in your heart. Someone tells him, and he tears his heart open to find them. And we see posters of that all over India. That's a kind of example of hard bhakti. And the Chota Haridas, we all know this story, I believe. And we all wonder about it. I wondered about it until my godbrother Vyasaki explained to me, and I think it makes sense, what was going on. And what was going on is that Mahaprabhu was observing that the senior sannyasis in his company were getting a little bit lax in their standards. But he was the junior sannyasi. He couldn't say anything to them. That would be improper. Wouldn't be proper Vaishnavic. But he was concerned because this would be a problem for the society of Vaishnavas as a whole. And so, on the principle of instructing the daughter-in-law through the daughter, he allowed Chota Haridas to get into trouble. It was such a minor offense. He spoke to an elderly lady who was a great devotee, Madhavi Devi. And yet, Mahaprabhu called him out on it and would not forgive him. He would not forgive him. And so we are told Chota Haridas left the company of the Vaiṣṇavas, went to the Sangam, the Triveni of the Ganga, Yamuna, Saraswati, and there he drowned himself. And as a result of that, he took the form of a Gandharva, who then would sing for Mahaprabhu, to whom was reported that this is what had happened, and Mahaprabhu was very satisfied. And then it says, or maybe before this, all the devotees suddenly became very fearful. And they would not even dream, they would not even think of women in their dreams. So this makes sense to me as an explanation. Kṛṣṇadāsa Kaviraj will say several times in the Chaitanya Charitamrita how to fathom the depth of the pastimes of Mahaprabhu. Okay, so that was just this first ring, the other Vaishnava groups, and then we have other Brahminical traditions. And who might we think of in these other Brahmanical traditions?
Smartas.
The Smartas? Yes? Anyone else? Any particular names?
Prakashananda.
Prakashananda?
Our Devananda.
Devananda Pandit, possibly, yes. Good, I hadn't thought of him myself. And how about Sarvabhauma? So these, especially Prakashananda and Sarvabhauma, as we already discussed, Prakashananda, that discussion comes up twice, Sarvabhauma is there. Again, it's a kind of one-upmanship, but now there's a more strong, I would say, philosophical or theological point that Vaiṣṇava is not Mayavada. Vaiṣṇava is not a Mayavadi. That distinction is made very strongly, possibly because this was a problem perceived, most probably because this was seen as a problem by Vrindavan Goswami. Yes.
Thank you. Ramdas Vishwas seems to fit sort of between maybe 3 and 4, because he's not a Brahmin, but he had an impersonal conception and paraded as a Vaishnava.
Ramdas, remind me.
Ramdas Vishwas was carrying the bags of Raghunath Bhatta Goswami on the way to Puri, and he was so humble, and he was just chanting the name of Ram all the way there. And Raghunath Bhatta Goswami was so impressed and so pleased with him, but Mahaprabhu was not pleased at all, and he neglected him.
Oh,
and he embraced Raghunath Bhatta Goswami and completely ignored Ramdas Vishwas, because he understood his inner motivation was to actually merge with Lord Ram.
But he was not a Brahmin.
He was not a Brahmin. He was saying that Raghunath Bhatta, I'm going to carry your things, and Raghunath Bhatta was embarrassed by that, but he kept saying, oh, this is proper because you're a Brahmana, you're a great Brahmana, I'm not, I'm just a lowly Shudra.
Right, yeah. Yes, thank you, that's interesting. As I said, this is a very crude diagram, and so there's no doubt many details that are not expressed by the diagram.
It's also in a similar vein as the in Vrindavan there, the people who go down to the bank at Kaliyaga and see the lights in the Yamuna, and they're thinking that they're having a spiritual experience, and they're all really impressed with that. And Lord Chaitanya's not. People are telling Lord Chaitanya, you have to come and see it. Right? And he's
and then Balabhadra wants to go.
right.
And what does Lord Chaitanya do? He slaps him. Nonsense.
It's also like, it sounds like a teachable moment with Mukunda, because he was talking with the Mayavadi, or he was friends with the Mayavadi, and Lord Chaitanya did not even, he kind of like rejected him.
I don't want to see him for a million years. Yes.
And then Mukunda said, oh, I will.
I'll see him. It'll be in a million years. Yes, that's nice teaching moment. So yeah, this major point is made very strongly with respect to or in relation to what we could categorize as Brahminical traditions. And then we have, in one category I've put Shaktas, Buddhists, and tribals. Why did I put them all in one? Not just to save space, but because they're all referred to by Kṛṣṇadāsa as Pakhandis, or Pashandis. Yeah. Pashandi is sometimes translated by Srila Prabhupada as heretic or atheist. But all three of them are referred to as Pashandi or Pakhandi. So, who do we have in this category? What episodes do we have?
Buddhists carrying the plate.
With meat.
Yes. tribals. There's a brief mention of tribals. Yes, Asuni.
Bhakta Haris?
Yes,
Yes.
Yeah.
but there's one other mention. Atataris, they're called. Atatari. But there's another mention. There's mention of the Bhils or Bhilas. When Mahaprabhu is traveling through Jarikanda forest, he meets the animals and he also meets these tribals, the Bhilas. And what happens? He gets them all to chant Hare Krishna. Yes, they're all chanting Hare Krishna. Okay, then,
What about the Shaktas, Maharaj?
yes, the Shaktas. What about the Shaktas?
We have them in Chaitanya Bhagavat and Chaitanya Charitamrita, right?
Well, maybe it's only minimally mentioned. What about the matter with Srivas Thakur?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They want to get him in trouble. And he calls everyone when he sees what they've done. He calls the villagers. Just see, I'm actually a Shakta.
In that case, are there any Shaktas involved, or is it just Brahmanas trying to frame him for being a Shakta?
Well, there's a saying in Bengal. I don't know the Bengali for this, but there's a saying. How does it go? Vaiṣṇava in public, Shaivite in private, and Tantric in secret, or Shakta in secret. The same person. So it's like everyone's kind of, all kinds of things mixed up together. Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway, we don't get any detail of that. The point there, of course, being that Srivas is a highly respected person, highly respected devotee. But apparently there was some kind of taint or attempted taint on his reputation. It also points out that story about how important reputation was. And there are other considerations, and this brings us back to the renunciation bhakti theme. How much Chaitanya Mahāprabhu was concerned for his own reputation. Well, the Chota Haridas incident is related to this. There's another incident. Can you think of an incident?
The little boy that he is patting on the head and very affectionate towards, and he's got an attractive widowed mother.
Yeah.
Damodar Pandit.
And Damodar Pandit.
Damodar Pandit scolds him and
Yeah.
says, "What are you doing? What do you think?"
There, Damodar Pandit seems to be concerned with his reputation, or Chaitanya doesn't seem to.
Oh, yes, in that case.
Yeah.
But Mahaprabhu does send the boy away after that, after he's instructed by Damodar Pandit. But that's how it ends. Like he does
Yeah.
maintain distance after that.
Yes, yes.
Might be out of deference to Damodar Pandit as opposed to concern for his reputation.
Yeah. Okay, there's another episode, short episode that happens in, I think I noted it. Antya-lila chapter 13, there's an episode after description of Jagadananda. That, okay, we can do that, Jagadananda. We can read that, but before we read that, I think it's time for another break. 10 minutes? This is a bit of a marathon.